600 for the first time since September last year.
NCR mayors agreed to impose a 2-week curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. starting Monday, March 15.
Napag-coordinate po kami sa ating kapulisan to our COP para po hindi lang po yung ating mga barangay tanod ang magmaman, meron tayong pulis na mismong make it a point na ito pong curfew na ito ay ma-implement.
The OCTA Research Group warns that daily cases nationwide could hit as high as 7,000 by the end of the month if this uptrend continues.
Ang timetable dito ay 2 linggo lamang. This will be for 2 weeks. Bakit 2 linggo? Dahil ang buhay ng virus ay mga 2 linggo, makikita mo na.
The OCTA Research Group has classified Metro Manila as high risk, while COVID-19 cases are also rising in its neighboring provinces. This was also the case 1 year ago today when the World Health Organization officially declared the coronavirus disease outbreak as a pandemic.
On a lighter note, appreciating art can help us relax from the stressful news about COVID-19, and it would be more magical if art were designed into animation. For instance, is a moving Fernando Amorsolo masterpiece helpful for our mental health? We discuss in this episode of the Chiefs.
Welcome to this weekend edition of the Chiefs. With us, of course, in the studios, Robbie Alampay of One News, and also joining us online, Ana Marie Pamintuan, the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Star, and Lucy Cruz Valdez, the head of News 5. Ladies and Robbie, happy weekend.
Hi, good evening.
Happy Friday.
Well, not really very happy, looking at the numbers.
But the figures are so scary, ha?
It's been a long week.
Sira na naman ang mga weekend plans
And
for
it looks
the
like
next,
it's going to be a longer month even.
I would imagine, no?
I do have one piece of news that, as a counterpoint to what we're marking right now, di ba? It's been 1 week already, and we'll be discussing all of this on Sunday sa town hall special natin. But counterpoint lang, crisis ngayon sa Cambodia because they recorded their first COVID death throughout this entire crisis.
Galing.
Di ba? I couldn't believe it. I had to double check all the news. First COVID death in Cambodia.
Okay, that leaves us speechless.
Diba?
So don't you wish we had their
Gusto ko
problems?
na lang positive, what are they doing right? Instead of asking, what have we been doing?
No, but it does signal, I mean, as ironic as that is, it does signal, and this leads us to our guest, it does signal that things are actually getting worse even in Cambodia. I mean, as ironic as that sounds, one death signals a complete turnaround also for Cambodia and their context for this thing. And now, that's what we're talking about again. On the first year of lockdown, things are clearly turning for the worse again.
Okay, so we begin our discussion tonight with the OCTA research team, our favorite guests, on the alarming numbers we are seeing with regard to COVID-19 in the country. We bring in Professor Guido and Professor Ranjit of OCTA Research. Professors, good evening and thank you again for joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening.
Professor Dr. Guido.
Well, Profs, your February 17 study, the one that you released before the one yesterday, you were already looking at what was termed then a catastrophic surge or possibly a catastrophic surge na mga 5,000 per day by the end of the month and 3,000 for Metro Manila also by the end of March. Ito pa lang wala pa tayong mid-month, we already hit 4.5, almost 4.6. Run us through the new numbers of your study that was released yesterday. What are we looking at? How bad is it going to be?
Yes, hi, Ed. Good evening. So yun nga, so in that February 17 report, and it seemed like, a long time ago, but it was just, less than a month ago, in that we said that if we loosened restrictions, and just to give a background, at that time, we were still okay. We were averaging 360 cases per day sa Metro Manila, 360. And we said that if we loosened restrictions to looser levels, and then a variant type virus takes hold in Metro Manila, ibig sabihin, what we did, this a simulation was, we imagined what would happen if yung Cebu surge happens in Metro Manila. So we copied yung reproduction number that we saw in Cebu, which was about 1.6 Cebu City. And then we made projections, and we saw that we would reach around 3,000 cases in Metro Manila by end of March. This a projection yun, we would reach about 2,000 cases in Metro Manila by
21st.
March 21.
Yeah.
Pero right now, we are already at 2,000 cases. Yes, in Metro Manila, Lucy. Actually, today we registered 2,150 cases in Metro Manila. So 9 days earlier than our crisis type projections that people were discrediting, scaremongering. But I mean, we're not beating our chest here. We're all very saddened by this, because our worst nightmares are coming true, and this is even worse than we imagined. Right now, your reproduction number has increased to 1.9. So we imagine it would be 1.6.
Oh, wow, 1.9.
So it's 1.9. It's not even stopping yet at that level. And now our new projections show now we could be reaching, by the end of the month, it could be 5,000 cases in Metro Manila. It could even go higher. I mean, we haven't seen a cap yet. And then sa buong
that's Metro
Philippines,
Manila.
we could see 6,500, maybe 7,000 in the whole Philippines. It could even go higher. This is not, we don't know how bad it can go pa. I mean,
Hey, does this merit a lockdown? This is the first question that comes to mind when we hear these figures.
Well, first of all, we first have to accept if there's a surge. Okay, until today, some members of the government, and of course, members of other stakeholders still do not agree that there is a surge. Okay, we have to first define the problem. There is a surge. And what can we do about it? Yesterday, we had a meeting with all the mayors of the National Capital Region, and we're extremely happy that that all of them believe in science, and all of them respect the data. It doesn't matter if it comes from OCTA or the DOH. The science is pretty clear. The data is very clear that there is a very serious and very fast, uptick, or increase in cases of COVID-19. Now, the two things we told the Metro Manila mayors is this. Yes, we can, agency, individual, citizenship will matter here in terms of compliance with minimum health standards, yes. But that won't cut it. That won't stop this surge. What will stop this surge is mobility restrictions, significant mobility restrictions. And we were very clear about that. And of course, we leave it to government, the economic managers, the health experts, to try to define how that is. The second proposal we gave to our mayors was to have a very strict GCQ. We had to, in a sense, accept that what we have now is not really GCQ. What we have now is a very, very loose, quarantine. And that we have to go back to having a strict GCQ, provided that whatever lockdowns that are happen would be not only supported, number two, humane, number three, but also number three, protective of the rights of our citizens in the communities to be affected by lockdown.
Professor
So
Rai,
that's what we suggested.
Yeah, Professor Rai, I mean, you've been saying that for a long time. Let's call a spade a spade. This is not actually GCQ. You said medyo GCQ na to. Actually, MGCQ. But when you say a stricter GCQ, are you in fact saying ECQ?
CQ.
That word is very hard to, these are quarantine terms that are so contested as far as government is concerned. What we do, what we want to emphasize, so that we're not lost in the terminology, is that mobility restrictions are now, or now need to be in place. It is the appropriate and timely response at this time, okay? Number two, the situation somehow, despite where we are, around 2,000, close to over 2,000 cases, is still surprisingly manageable for the National Capital Region. But we don't see a downward trend in the offing. That's what we're saying. People have to have a frank discussion. if this GCQ doesn't work in the next 2 to 4 weeks, we might need to consider a stricter quarantine. Okay, and we were able to talk to our mayors about that, and everybody was of the consensus. Let's try the strict GCQ with adjustments as far as business is concerned, with adjustments as far as curfew is concerned. Okay, and the use of targeted lockdowns. So this is where we are at the moment, Robbie. Yes, little short of saying that, yes, that's possibly what health experts would suggest. But really, the situation is not that simple. If health concerns were the only concerns, maybe that suggestion would be straightforward. You kill it in 2 or 3 weeks, no? And wait for it to subside 2 or 3 weeks after. It was successful in the NCR last August, September. It could work now, especially with these new variants coming in. It's a logical thing to do. But really, the economy will suffer. Lives and livelihoods, there has to be a balance.
Professors, nung nag-warning kayo, it was only a month ago. And seeing how this virus, these variants are behaving sa ibang bansa, napakarami na nilang countries. It's really, exponential yung increase. You think curfew lang is enough?
No. That's what we were saying, ma'am. We can't be very specific. OCTA has always been,
At this point, yun lang ang gustong payagan ng economic teams natin in particular.
No, but we were saying that
yung government natin. Pero, ano bang pwede? Like, you want restrictions on mass transportation, for example? And
we're not suggesting that specific, ma'am. Yeah. Well, mobility restrictions would be, okay, for example, a rollback, on the percentage of people who can enter restaurants is one.
Capacity.
All hours is another. Okay, those are very specific, but we don't want to go into that, except to emphasize that minimum compliance with minimum health standards won't cut it as far as this surge is concerned. We need to slow it down. Okay, I don't know if we can reverse it, but we certainly can mitigate it. And the thing is to get vulnerable people inside the homes, reduce social gatherings, reduce potential for super spreader events. Restaurants are going to be a big issue here, and we're not saying anything specific because I think the essence of what we're saying is already out there. We need the economic managers, the DOH, the medical experts to come together and say, okay, how do we stop this surge? There's a surge, how do we stop it? And it seems very clear. The playbook is very clear. You've seen it in all the other countries where this has happened. In most of Europe, this has ravaged Europe, and caused what they call their second and third waves. Now, we don't want that to happen in the Philippines. We don't want that to happen in NCR.
Okay, can we just be clear about this? How much of a difference will wearing masks again, making sure that people are more compliant again, how strong is the argument that this is really the result of nothing more than just failure to comply, complacency?
Well, I think to be fair to to our countrymen, we can't blame it all on them. I mean, the fact of the matter is we've also increased mobility. We had to because we had to open up the economy. That's one. It's true. We have a survey to prove this that there's some decline in compliance with the basic or minimum public health standards. But there's a third thing, that's driving this surge, and it's a variant. These are the variants, and we've been arguing this not really from the position of our genome sequencing, which is a very, very important, okay, but really based on the numbers, and I think Professor Guido can talk about this more. That based on the number, the signature is very clear that it's a variant-driven surge, and because it's a variant-driven surge, we have to do something more than just minimum compliance with minimum public health standards. But Luci, I have to emphasize that is important. That is very important. That's so important. But we need to do more. Okay.
Professor David.
Yeah, Dr. Guido, I'm more interested in how you established basically that this is variant-driven, because not one of our interviewees has admitted that this is variant-driven.
Mga mayor na.
Yes, well,
Yes, actually.
we concede na to confirm that it is variant driven, we will need significant biosurveillance and genome sequencing, which right now we don't have the capacity for because of limited resources. A country like UK, they could do biosurveillance for the entire population because they have a lot of resources for genome sequencing. Pero that being said, what we are seeing is that we never saw this kind of rate of increase in Metro Manila. I mean, throughout the entire pandemic period, since 1 year ago, since our anniversary, we haven't seen this kind of increase, and we haven't seen this kind of infection in households and in minors. So there is nothing that can explain that except for a more infectious virus. Now, even if we don't want to call it a variant, we can say that the virus has become more infectious. I mean, it's about the same thing. I mean, it has transformed itself into something 50% more infectious, and that has caused the reproduction number to increase beyond what it is normally at. Because last year when we had the surge in August, the reproduction number increased to about 1.8, but now it's already at 1.9. So it's even faster.
Yeah,
than
Professor
last year.
David,
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is there maybe you've been projecting the numbers when it comes to the cases per day could reach 6,500, 7,000 on national level by the end of the month. Kanina, we were also shocked by you saying that look, the R0 is practically at 2 already. Doon ba sa R0 may projection din kayo? I mean, and when you say 7,000, that presupposes what's the R0 by the end of the month, and if it continues, how high could the R0 go?
Actually, Robbie, yung 7,000 just presupposes an R0 of 1.8. So we are even a bit conservative in our projections sa lagay na yan eh. I mean, the original projections we used to 1.5 to 1.6 because that's what we saw in Cebu City, an R0 of about 1.6. And the fact that this is even higher than in Cebu City is concerning, and it may be because we have a different variant or another variant that's spreading here, and that's the South African variant, which may be also more infectious or equally infectious as the UK variant.
Okay.
So we're not projecting the R0 to increase further, but some of the members of the team are thinking that it will go up as high as 2. And it's practically 2 already. So we hope it won't increase past 2. But what we saw in Pasay City, for example, it actually increased to as high as 2.25 before they sort of slowed it down. And because the R0 that we're seeing in NCR is really an average of the R0s that we're seeing in different LGUs. And there are some LGUs that are still not undergoing a major surge. For example, Pateros. Actually, Pateros na lang yata yung hindi pa nagkakaroon ng surge. Seeing that kind of reproduction numbers sa Pasay means that it could happen in Metro Manila if the whole Metro Manila is infected, at that rate. We could see even worse numbers. But right now we're keeping our numbers fairly conservative because some people in the community are already targeting us for being scaremongers.
So, Prof, your estimate of 7,000, that's actually on the low side pa of your estimates.
Well, hindi
That's what
naman
you're
low side. It could go lower. Maybe 6,500 is now the low side. Pero 7,000 maybe a bit more of the median estimate. Pero it could still go higher. than 7,000.
Okay. Is this worse than August, September? If it is worse, what I want to ask is whether we can say that we are more ready or more equipped now than we were back in August or September. At least makakapagbalanse ba yun somehow?
Let me answer that, Giz. I think based on the data, this is worse than our last surge. Okay, and it's not just in terms of how many people are now infected. No, now on the average per day, the spread and the speed of the contagion is it's very fast. So it's become very bad very quickly. Okay, and while the situation is still manageable, we're asking we're exhorting everyone, no, to try to find a way to curtail it. And what we're arguing is for more mobility restrictions, we have to get stricter. Now, are we better off now? Yes, we are certainly better off now in terms of testing, tracing, isolation, and even treatment. We are in a better situation to deal with this surge. It's only the surge is gargantuan, no? It's the potential of the surge is huge, no? At 5,000 cases, I don't know if our hospital system can manage something that big. The last time we closed down, it was something like 2,500 cases per day. And our doctor said, no, we can't take this anymore. Maybe now we can, well, we know better. We're better equipped now. We have more resources at, at our disposal and better coordinated. We could take a little more, I'm certain. But given the potential of this surge, okay, in its full fruition, full-blown surge, I think our hospital system might
call
not
for
be able to
timeout
make
again.
it, no? Yeah, we'll ask for a timeout.
Professors, kung mag-full-blown surge, in fact, the mayor of Pasay City is proposing ECQ in her city. Is that advisable na per city, invest na granular lockdowns, are the granular lockdowns enough? Kasi yung Pasay, nakahanda na siya eh. Buong city na lang.
Yes, we were actually looking at the effect of localized lockdowns, and they are in fact working kasi we're seeing a slowdown in some of the LGUs that implemented localized lockdowns. So there was a slight slowdown in Pasay, and also Malabon and Navotas. We're seeing a slowing down of the pandemic curve, but right now it's increasing in other parts of Metro Manila. So we know that the Metro Manila, mayors are coordinated, but of course, ideally we could have the lockdown at the same time, siguro, so that para one time, big time na lang. Let's end this because there's always a concern that, and it's not just in Metro Manila, because there's also an increase now happening in parts of Calabarzon. Rizal, we're seeing an increase already significantly, and in Cavite and in parts of Bulacan. So that might affect the Metro Manila moving forward, kasi if we are able to contain the numbers here, pero in parts of near outside Metro Manila, they will have an increase that could potentially affect the numbers here in Metro Manila. Yeah. So I think there should be definite coordination, not just in Metro Manila, but also in the greater Metro Manila area with Calabarzon and Central.
Professor Wright, Professor David, I don't know if you're speaking of, let's look beyond every city, let's look at Metro Manila. Are you looking at the numbers outside of the Philippines? I'm just curious because there's this graph that I look at for Southeast Asia quite regularly. And I'm just wondering, kasi sa Indonesia, absolute numbers talagang mas mataas sila sa atin. No? They have much more cases. But if you look at the past few weeks, they're trending downwards. And we're still trending upwards. I'm just wondering if you've had occasion to ask what's happening in Indonesia, assuming that they're facing the same things that we are. Their urban centers are pretty much the same as ours, same traffic, same mass transportation, and so on. And let's assume also they have the variants there as well. What's the difference?
Well, Robbie, we are looking at other countries in Southeast Asia also, and we did notice na mas mababa na yung cases per day sa Indonesia compared to the Philippines. I'm not sure about the presence of the variants there, how prevalent, but I think they have done more vaccinations. I'm not too sure about that. I mean, I don't have the actual raw numbers, but my belief is that they are ahead of us in terms of vaccinations. And I think that has contributed to the downward trend that they're seeing in Indonesia. So,
well, Prof, I'm looking at your...
Big time, what were you referring to, Professor David? One time, big time, what do you mean by that?
Those are the deadly words, no? MECQ. I think that's what Professor David was trying to say. Yeah, but that's an option. you know, as a social scientist, in my view, as a natural scientist, a mathematician like Guido, and the rest of the team, no, half the team is made up of doctors. We have to bring it out. We have to have a frank conversation. We don't want us to end up like, let's say, Great Britain a few months ago, no, or let's say France, no, or Germany, where you had what, tens of thousands of cases on a daily basis, because before they decided to lock down. We're at a manageable level now. What we're saying is let's reduce mobility now significantly. Let's be strict about our protocols and expand testing and tracing, because that's what's going to help us deal with this surge, and hope, no, that our own. I'm very confident in the Filipino, no, in our countrymen, that they will be more disciplined with the practice of with exercising the minimum health standards, and let's see if this will slow it down. It's impossible to reverse it now, in my view, where it's going now. I think it can slow down with a strict GCQ. Now, whereas with an MECQ, then you have a dramatic, impact on this surge, no? Especially if you're doing it for more than 2 weeks, no? Maybe a month. You'll bring this down, and then you can open up for the next 2, 3, 4 months. And we're not suggesting that now. What I'm saying is, there are advantages to having these drastic mobility, these quarantines that affect drastically mobility.
Yeah.
And in an ecosystem like, and I like the question of Robbie, in an ecosystem like the NCR, it's very complicated, because you're linked up with other regions like Calabarzon, with Bulacan, with Rizal. It's complicated to make decisions, but at the same time you have to, because you infect not just NCR but a whole a set of provinces, a whole region, no, where a lot of workers from the NCR go home too.
Yeah.
So the decisions, no, we have to do here are crucial and strategic. And that's why maybe it's very hard for government to make a decision at the moment.
Yeah,
and so we're suggesting go for a strict GCQ muna.
Yeah, speaking of that, Professor Rai, as you pointed out, kayo tinitindigan nyo is data, especially when it comes to, as you said, this signature that you're observing, and you surmise that it must be new variants driving that. But you, Professor David, you also did say that, in the meantime, did I hear you right? Basically, are you saying that on the policy level, our policymakers, our leaders are waiting on empirical evidence, in particular, genomic confirmation that these are the new variants. But 2 weeks ago, nung nag-umpisa tayo mag-usap about new variants, everybody was saying we have to wait 2 weeks for the genome evidence to come in. 2 weeks is practically up. Are we expecting that surge of data to confirm the new variants, and therefore are we expecting more or less something that can further prompt government to recalibrate its intervention by next week?
Well, Robbie, thank God we have a genome center, no, and they're doing a great job with the limited resources they have. And yeah, they've identified na. We have 51 cases of the UK variant, okay, and a smaller number of cases for the South African variant. We already have it, no, but
yeah, but
so
everybody
as far as the
everybody when
presence of
you talk to, both from the national levels, although sa local levels must open sila. In fact, they're becoming more unapologetic in acknowledging your point. Na hindi, we can't deny the data anymore. But the more we speak to people on the national level, the more that they seem to be waiting on that. Na, no, we need the hard evidence to confirm. And then, I don't know, maybe that's the time that both national, local level governments and the researchers will be on the same page.
Yeah, I think there's this. I think since the last 2 weeks now, since we've been talking, I mean, there has been a consensus now as far as even the experts in the Department of Health. A very important expert there, Dr. John Wong, has already, in a sense, recognized that this is an unusual surge that we have in the National Capital Region. It could be a product of not just expanded mobility and decline of compliance, but also the fact that it might be variants also already influencing it. And I think there's no debate about that anymore, Robbie. I think the big debate now is what to do. I think there's a recognition that the situation is dire. It is evolving. It is going to move to a higher peak, no, very soon.
But to your point, precisely, the what to do is driven by that subtle, difference on who to blame. I mean, frankly, my impression is the national government keeps saying, and it's the behavior of people and so on. I mean, short of seeing the hard data, that's where they keep that discussion going.
Yeah, I guess there's still a belated recognition that this is very serious and could go bad very quickly, and that there has to be something done drastically. Yeah, this is a complicated thing. The government is trying to balance both lives and livelihoods, and we understand that. We understand that, Rob. But this is something that they have to decide. They're the decision makers. We just churn out the data. What seems to be clear is our data is not different from DOH, and DOH is seeing the same thing. Now the question is, what are we going to do? Our mayors are doing something about it, but the national government has to adjust.
Dr. John Wong
Okay, what would be more drastic? Sorry.
Ang warning ni Dr. John Wong, ninefold increase, is that the same as your projection? Ninefold increase now.
I think ninefold increase. I think it's in a way, it is happening already. Ninefold increase, and it could be worse with our revised projections. Pero adding to what Professor Ranjit said, yung sinasabi kong one time, big time. This is my proposal, so hear me out. So I propose gawin natin 2 weeks yung Holy Week natin. And then we all stay at home and pray and maybe do some fasting. And then baka paglabas natin, the world is okay now. Baka after our prayers will be answered. That's my proposal. I don't know.
2 week Holy Week,
2 week Holy Week.
That makes sense.
Do you remember nung January, diba, we closed down?
You're going to pay for that, Guido.
Hindi si Ludwig kung papayag siya para sa TV5.
No, this is a holiday, 2 week holiday. We're not closing down.
People are gonna watch TV during
we'll watch reruns of Ten Commandments.
I can imagine Professor David, at least two classes, 3 classes in UP fully endorsing your proposal.
Yeah, my students will be very happy.
No, but do you remember nung January, in order to prevent the entry of the variant, we had to ban certain flights from something like 24 or so countries. I can't remember the figure, no? But will that help? Is that too drastic? And if it's not, will that at least help at this point, or hindi na dahil community transmission na?
I think it's hindi na siguro. I think what we have to do now is just really strengthen the quarantine, plug in our leaky quarantines in our ports and in our airports. Try to reconsider just for now the Department of Tourism's proposals for a more flexible movement of people to aid tourism, to boost tourism. We're in a surge at the moment, and I think government understands that. It's taking time. The calibration needed to make these decisions take time because ang daming stakeholders. We have the business sector that really is just beginning to stand up, no?
Yes.
And I'm very sure. Alam niyo naman yung complexity of this. But OCTA is here to provide the data and give you the state of where we are now. And we're standing on the data here. I mean, forget about OCTA. We stand by the science, the data that we present. And we would like to be judged by that. No? And what we're trying to do is not to alarm people, but to inform people. Once people get a sense of their risk, they will make adjustments. We're very confident in the Filipino. We've dealt with the surge before. I'm sure we're going to deal with this again.
Professor,
we hope the government will adjust appropriately.
Professor Rai, I suspect, din sa suggestion ni Professor David, you've had your private debates about this, I suspect, but I am curious about it. And you being the social scientist in the duo, in the team, I'm just wondering your take on it. Because what I like about it is anchored on culture. Maybe culture is something that can be a counterfactor to everything. It gives us a safe space to reframe staying at home. On the other hand, I don't know. What's your thought on given that on the other hand, you say Holy Week dito, people are thinking I'm getting out of town. Di ba? So, but on balance, how would you take that kind of proposal, if not that specific proposal, but at least the out-of-the-box thinking that let's try to reframe a lockdown in terms of things that are more palatable to people?
I think that's what we tried also to explain to our mayors, that the details, while they are important, they have to be done in a way that will that is not just humane, no, but also protective of the rights of our own citizens, no, and at the same time also balancing the real challenge of livelihoods of sustaining life. So that's why our framing now in OCTA is, we try to follow all of these things, that all of these protocols that government is asking us to follow, not just to protect ourselves, not just to protect our families and our communities, but largely to keep the economy open. And this is why we're egging people on. We're trying to start a conversation, a frank conversation, how we can stop this. We just can't put our heads in the sand and hope things will get better. It's not. Okay, it's a mathematical certainty, in the words of Professor David, no, that it is going to go up, it is going up, and we don't see it going down with what we have now. And so, government will will define a position in this soon, and I'm sure it will be based on science and data. And right now, what seems to be clear among our mayors is that the GCQ, we can fight this surge within the framework of a GCQ. But it will be very strict. There will be compliance, monitoring and enforcement of compliance, and that there will be adjustments very soon as far as loosening restrictions are concerned. So some of the loosening of restrictions will have to be rolled back. And those details, I think, are the technical teams of government. They're all working on it now. And we're hoping that they do it very soon, because this thing is spreading like wildfire. And right now, it's 60% na yung ating hospital beds, no? So it's faster than the projection that we provided the public.
Okay. Professors Ranjit and Guido David, sirs, maraming salamat for joining us tonight.
Thank you po.
Ingat po.
Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Good evening.
We'll just go into a break, so please stay with us.
Welcome back, the Chiefs, here on One News. We're now in the final stage of our conversation. Now joining us is motion designer and animator Mark Cañega. Good evening, Mr. Cañega.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
Good evening po.
And thank you for being here and changing our topic for a change, something really, really pleasant. If people are wondering who Mr. Cañega is, you may not know him, but it's quite likely that in the past few days you've seen his work, because Mr. Cañega was the one who animated that Amorsolo painting, yung Dalagang Bukid. I saw it. Ang galing eh, di ba? And people were really fascinated. I'm wondering, Mark, nagulat ka ba? Were you surprised by the response of people? And why did you make that in the first place?
Sa totoo lang po, dalawa na yung Amorsolo painting na na-animate ko. Yung pinakauna is yung couple riding a carabao during sunset. Pinost ko siya last February, in celebration for the Arts Month and Valentine's Month as well. So doon po ako talaga nagulat kasi umabot po siya ng 10K shares, yung post lang na yun. Tapos umabot na po sa media na parang ang dami nang narating nung post. Nagulat talaga ako. So, yung una ko po kasi talagang plano talaga is gagawa nga ako ng series ng mga animation paintings ni Sir Amorsolo. Pero since medyo busy din ako with my personal works and client works, parang hindi ko siya pinaprioritize. But simula nung na-overwhelm ako dun sa mga comments ng mga tao diyan sa first na pinost ko na painting Amorsolo, parang different yung ano nila yung approaches nila. Yung iba parang may mga nagme-message sa akin ng mga senior citizen na natutuwa sila na mga naalala nila yung mga childhood nila, yung mga parang araw nila sa bukid, yung mga ganun. Tapos parang meron yung mga naalala nila yung mga lolo't lola nila. So, actually, may mga nag-message nga rin po sa akin personally na nagti-thank you sila sa akin kasi ginawa ko yun. So parang ako po, na-touch ako kasi hindi ko naman, ginawa ko siya para sa sarili ko eh. So, knowing na parang may mga namumove na tao dun sa gawa ko na hindi ko naman sinasadya. So, parang nag-lead po siya through this another one na Dalagang Bukid, parang in celebration naman po for the Women's Month.
Saka baka may nalala silang dalaga, no?
Generations, nag-react ba sa'yo? Marami bang nag-react na mga bata? Kasi sabi, you're making art more accessible to this gadget crazy generation eh. Marami bang mga batang nag-react din? Yung first work?
Actually, marami rin po. Especially yung mga millennial talaga. Kasi po si Sir Amorsolo naman, parang since elementary, nakikita na namin siya, parang kasama talaga siya sa journey ng kahit sinong millennial and post-millennial people eh. So parang ang daming natutuwa yung mga bata, lalo na parang mas malawak yung narating nung post dahil nga sa social media and parang na-post siya ng mga iba-ibang page and umabot na nga po sa mga ibang news media. So, yung mga bata, mostly ang kinokomenta nila is parang natutuwa sila na parang naalala nila yung mga lolo at lola nila. And at the same time, parang namimiss nila yung parang kung gaano kasimple yung buhay dati na parang umuwi sila ng province para umuwi sila ng mga province para makita yung mga kamag-anak nila. So mas ganun yung nagiging feel sa kanila. And at the same time, parang kasi nasa pandemic po tayo ngayon eh. So parang maganda siya na nakatulong siya sa mga tao, especially sa mental health ng karamihan ng mga tao ngayon. Kasi parang may something, may good memories sila na naalala. So para sa akin, malaking bagay yun.
Oo. Nag-react na ba sa'yo yung pamilya ni Amorsolo? I'm just curious, no? I wonder if they reached out to you kasi I'm sure seeing their father or grandfather's paintings animated like this, no? I wonder kung natutuwa sila or diba, parang alam mo naman ng mga artists diba? They can be also quite jealous of the work they do, no? So I'm just wondering, have you heard from them?
Yesterday po or last Tuesday, inad po ako sa Facebook ni Miss Julia Valdez. So, parang grandfather niya po kasi si Fernando Amorsolo. So, gulat din po talaga ako. Tapos parang, nagti-thank you nga po siya dahil parang nabigyan ng buhay nga po yung mga gawa nung grandfather niya. And sinabi ko rin naman po na parang, kasi as an artist, parang si Sir Amorsolo talaga isa sa mga naggabay sa amin eh. And knowing po kasi na parang malapit na yung 50th death anniversary niya. So parang magandang rin po talaga siya.
Pero Mark, how difficult was it to make this? How difficult was it to make this rendering? Kasi of course you do have your own creative license to tinker with it as much as you want. But at the same time, I suppose you'd also want to retain some of the characters of the original portrait. So run through the process and how you decide what part of your imagination to let loose and how much of your imagination to rein in.
Gaano katagal? Parang depende po kasi, parang ginagawa ko kasi siya mostly ng mga free time ko talaga. Para kasi sa akin, yung mga personal works na ginagawa ko, sila yung parang stress reliever ko dun sa mga client works eh. Kasi iba po kasi talaga yung feeling pag sa'yo galing yung concept na wala kang pinapakinggan na ibang tao. So, sinisingit-singit ko siya hanggang sa siguro mga 3 days po to 4 days. Ang pinakamatagal na proseso is yung pagre-repaint ng mga parts. So, for example, dyan po sa may Carabao, so kailangan kong i-paint yung mga part na natatakpan ng tao kasi kailangan niya mag-move eh. So, even yung background, yung mga clouds sa likod, yung sa Dalagang Bukid, yung mga grass, yung jar na hinahawakan niya, dapat po talaga hiwa-hiwalay. And at the same time, ma-maintain yung authenticity and kung gaano kaganda yung mga brush stroke ni Sir Amorsolo. Kasi once na parang ginawan ko na siya ng sarili kong rendition, parang dinidisrespect ko na rin po siya. And at the same time, nung ina-animate ko na siya, nilalagay ko lang yung sarili ko dun sa perspective ni Mr. Amorsolo, kung ano yung nakikita niya, kung ano yung na-imagine niya, kung gaano ba anong oras ba to, anong oras ba nangyayari to, hapon ba, mahangin ba dito, yung mga ano ba yung feeling ng character na nandito? Are they in love? Are they serious? Are they mad? So parang mas ganun ko po siya nilaro talaga. Tapos konting research.
Mark, baka I'm sure there are young artists also watching this show and wondering ano kayang ginamit niya. I mean, what was your setup? Both hardware and software, anong ginamit mo?
Doon sa pag-repaint nung mga layers, ang ginamit ko is Procreate sa iPad siya. Pero pwede rin naman gumamit ng mga Adobe softwares like Photoshop and maraming rin mga iba-ibang software sa mga libre na pwede nilang magamit. Tapos for animation is After Effects yung ginamit ko for animation. Then I do the sound effects and yung mga audio sa Premiere. Pero para sa akin naman po, wala naman po sa software yan eh. Magagawa na kung talagang gusto mo talagang gawin yung isang bagay, gagawa ako ng paraan para gawa mo siya.
Where did you learn animation? Professional Where did you learn animation?
Nag-graduate po ako sa Binild, sa De La Salle College of St. Binild with the help of Gawad Kalinga. Yeah, as scholar po. So sila po yung tumulong sa akin para makagraduate sa Binild. Kasi galing po ako sa lower class family, so parang sila yung nag-help na makapasok ako sa La Salle with Binild with the help of the scholarship. Then sa Binild po, nag-graduate ako around 2015. And by 2018 ngayon po, nagpa-part-time teaching po ako sa Binild rin ngayon sa mga animation students.
Okay.
So
Mark,
anong next project mo? Anong next painting ang gusto mong i-animate?
May mga nakapila na po, pero hindi ko pa masabi kung ano-ano sila. Though may naisip ako na isa, it's for the Independence Day, is yung, nakalimutan ko yung title, pero yung parang yung mga nagtatahi ng flag ng Pilipinas. Yeah, that one po.
Sana gawin mo yung spolyarium.
Darating din po tayo dyan. Inisip ko po talaga na tapusin muna yung mga Amorsolo paintings. Tapos, kung papalarin po, maybe next year or next year, at least makapag-exhibit na katulad nung parang sa Van Gogh like na. Parang ganun po siya nakikita. Parang ma-enjoy talaga ng mga tao. Pagtapos na tong crisis natin, makapunta sila, makita nila yung parang animated painting, makapagpa-picture and stuff. So at least parang masaya sila. Ano po yung mahalaga?
Mark, kanina nga, speaking of the experience, kanina sabi mo nga, you tried to put yourself doon sa utak ni Amorsolo. Ano bang nakikita niya dito? Ikaw, as an artist, diving into it now, sinabi mo yung mga tanong mo. Pero ano yung mga pagninilay-nilay mo? Habang ginagawa mo, meron ka bang mga napansin doon sa painting na, hindi ko napansin dati yan. Ngayon ko lang napansin yan dahil I'm so deep into this.
Actually, yung mas, parang, kasi, syempre, nung bata pa po ako, syempre, di ko naman nakikita yung other side of this. Parang, mas nakikita ko lang na maganda yung painting and all. Pero, syempre po, habang, nung ginagawa ko siya, especially yung couple riding Carabao during sunset ni Sir Amorsolo, parang, syempre po, nag-ano sa akin yung parang kalagayan nga rin ng mga magsasaka dito sa Pilipinas na parang para sa mata ang ganda ang tignan ng painting, pero the story behind that, the people who are really into those kind of situation, parang syempre po they need more attention in terms of, maraming factor eh. Pero sa art kasi parang that's the listing that I want to think eh. Kasi parang ayokong ikulong kasi yung sarili ko with the issues na parang mag-burden sa akin para hindi ko siya ituloy. Kasi gusto ko lang enjoyin talaga yung process. Parang even if it's political, even if it's offensive, as long as I'm having fun doing that piece of art, I don't mind.
Ay, well, talagang you're a true artist, di ba? Ganyan naman talaga kayo eh. Talagang you find fulfillment in just doing what you want to do, even if there's no monetary return, di ba? Okay, pagsasamantalahan ka namin one of these days. Joke.
Pero Lucy, baka hindi mo lang alam. You're assuming na wala. Marami rin. Meron din.
Sa creatives, freelance creatives, ano nang impact sa inyo? Kumusta na environment ngayon?
Well, katulad rin naman po ng ibang industry, affected din naman po kami sa nangyari talaga sa pandemic. Maraming nawalan ng trabaho, madaming walang projects and all. So ako kahit pa paano naman po, medyo sinuwerte na nagkaroon pa rin ng mga projects a long time. Pero ayun po, may mga kakilala ako, may mga friends ako na parang affected po talaga sila. Walang masyadong pumapasok na mga clients kasi nga syempre nagtitipid din yung mga kliyente, nagtitipid din yung ibang mga company, tapos may mga nagsasara. So medyo mahirap, pero ngayon po kasi meron ng mga way din para ma-expose yung sarili. Unlike before, ngayon sobrang lakas ng social media talaga, especially sa mga artists, na nasa-showcase namin yung work namin without violating rights or whatever. Parang ayun nga po, yung Amorsolo hindi ka naman in-expect na ganun siya magbo-boom. Tapos meron ng mga opportunity rin na mga dumating sa akin, mga possible connections and possible projects. So ngayon po, medyo nakakabawi na. So sana po magtuloy-tuloy, and kung hindi man, sana mas mabigyan pansin yung mga artists dito sa Pilipinas dahil maraming magagaling pero hindi lang nabibigyan ng magandang opportunity talaga.
Totoo.
Okay. Mr. Mark Cañega, motion designer and animator. Maraming salamat, Mark. And
Maraming salamat po.
good luck
Maraming salamat
to
sa
your
inyo.
career, and may you be a future
Sana
Amorsolo.
dumami pa ang tribo nyo.
Amorsolo in the making.
Thank you po. Dadami pa po yan.
Ingat. And before we end, we'd like to invite you to watch Kamusta Na Ba Tayo with our very own Robbie Alampay and Cheryl Cosim. Catch it live this Sunday, March 14, 6 p.m. here on One News. Robbie and Cheryl will talk with key decision makers and discuss the impact of community quarantines on Filipinos as we complete year 1 of COVID-19 restrictions. And that'll be all for this weekend edition of the Chiefs. Dalawang araw na lang at Lunes na ulit. But we hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Remember, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Edwin Gao.
I'm Mami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay and we are One News.